Hello, welcome to this video about the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. Today we will see 3 verses, again describing essential practices of Tantric Yoga. First, verse 90. Om abindum avisargaṃ akāraṃ japato mahān udeti devi sahasā jñānaughaḥ parameśvaraḥ. So here, japato, one should recite like japa of a mantra with a rosary. One should recite akāraṃ, not a mantra, but the sound the sound the first letter of the alphabet, both Latin alphabet and Sanskrit. And one should recite it abindum, without any nasalization like no and avisargaṃ, without any expiration because in Sanskrit those are the 2 last vowels, anuswara and visarga, So just this is what it means, without adding anything, just a pure simple. And then, while reciting that, what is the effect of that recitation? The effect is mahān jñānaughaḥ, the great flow of knowledge, parameśvaraḥ, that is the Supreme Lord, udeti, surges, arises, starts to flow like a spring. Devi, goddess, because there's still Shiva answering the goddess. So you install yourself comfortably and you just start making the sound Forget about reciting whatever. There is nothing about that here. There is japato, but there is no, I don't think given the context, it's really about reciting like numbering, counting something. But just saying, resonating like a game, like an exploration, like an experiment, if you will, and seeing the result. And the result here is that reciting your mind dissolves away, your attention dissolves away into the ever-present background of awareness. And here we have quite a long, detailed commentary by Shivopadhyaya with several quotes, and especially quotes by Vamananatta, a master who has written a small teaching about 2 verses of the Vijnana, of this Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, and this verse 90 being one of those 2 verses, about the practice of sounding which is a very important practice. You see, it's not just the sounding of the sound and the symbolism of it. Rather, it is the fact that when you sound you open your mouth. Just like in the previous verse, you were told to open your mouth and letting the tongue floating, as it were, and spelling a ha. So here is the same thing with ha is not so different. It's the idea of dropping the jaws and remaining in a kind of stance of amazement And this is Shiv Mudra again, Bhairava, Shambhu, Shambhavi Mudra again. And again, it is not the practice of that same name of the Hatha Yoga tradition, but it's Tantric Yoga here. It's a stance of awareness, of meditation with wide open eyes and open mouth. And you can even find that practice of spelling Ha or A, especially Ha, in the Siddhantika teachings. I found some verse, I don't remember of which tantra, but I put it in my French anthology, which is an anthology among our topics about that Shiva Shambhavi Mudra. So there are long quotes here. In fact, Shivopadhyaya quotes almost entirely the work of Vamananath called the Dvaya Sampatti, and he calls it the Dvaya Sampatti here. Dvaya Sampatti Karastu Vamananath, because there are a variant of that name, Advaya Sampatti, the non-dual realization. Here's the double realization of Shiva and Shakti, and of the light of the white A inside the heart, and of the sound of the Ha. He combines the two practices, A and Ha, in his teaching, the Ha of the inner sound of Shakti. And so the double realization of Shiva and Shakti in those two forms, light and sound, Prakasha and Vimarsha, manifestation and speech, Shiva and Shakti. And Vamananath interestingly says at the end of his work that he calls the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra the teaching of the Siddhas, of the realized ones. So, and then before that he quotes several texts to make the point that A is a symbol of the Absolute, A Anuttara, of course. And he quotes from the Upanishad, Evam eva dvitiyam brahma. Thus, the Absolute is one without a second. Sarvam kalvidam brahma. He had just quoted that line just before. All this is the Absolute. And avachanena eva provacha sahatushnim babhuva. He remains silent. And then he says, Iti shrutyartha etad anukulaha. So he remains silent in a state of amazement. And that silence, as Ramana said so often, expressing that supreme speech, paravak, that is awareness, that is sky-like, wide open awareness. Well, and he quotes the interpretation of, he mentions the interpretation of Svam, who says that akāraṃ in a state of holding the breath, retention, inner mental silence and holding the breath, ucharahinam, without saying. It's a mute ah. It's a mute ah. Well, that's interesting, but just mentioning that, by the way. And then, as often, Ananda, very short, pithy commentary, to the point, but nothing new, nothing more. So now, verse 91. Om varṇasya savisargasya visargāntaṃ citiṃ kuru nirādhāreṇa cittena spṛśed brahma sanātanam. So here, what we have, guess you have the practice with the visargāṃ. And so you see, it's not very important that it's It's not so important. The important thing is the precognitive impulse behind it. Precognitive impulse, as Professor Sanderson would say, is the surge, the energy, the movement, the basic movement at the source of all of those spellings, be they of the mind only or physical or whatever. It's the movement, the expansion behind it, at the root of it. That's what is important here. So, citiṃ kuru, put your attention. So here we have a good example of citiḥ, which is usually translated as consciousness or dynamic consciousness, meaning not absolute consciousness, metaphysical consciousness, but clearly meaning attention. Citiṃ kuru, so make your attention, pay attention to visargāntaṃ, to the end of the exhalation. Visarga is like in Shivaha, parameśvaraḥ, ashvaha, etc. So to the end of that expiration of that non-resonating, it's not ha, it's It's like a soft wind coming out of the mouth. So to the end of that, like the end of om, of varṇasya savisargasya, of a syllable that has that expiration at the end. So shivaha, parameśvaraḥ, or even it can be with e, and then the ha would be with an echo of the vowel preceding, like śaktiḥ, and so on, or dhenuhu, pashuhu, etc. And you practice like that, or even no So it's a kind of silent om. And then what happens? Nirādhāreṇa cittena. Because your attention then is without support, no more fixating, but relaxing, opening, like a fist opening, okay? Because your attention has no more support, no more fixation. In other words, because your attention relaxes, spṛśed brahma sanātanam. One will touch, one will feel, spṛśed, sparsha, touching. One will feel, one will touch, one will have direct contact, because sparsha, touch, is the most direct, intimate form of perception. One will touch what? Brahma, the absolute, sanātanam, which is primordial, there right from the start. So here again is a practice of the speech, a practice of sound, if you will. And we have again a detailed commentary by Shivopadhyaya, which is described as the Saptadashi Kala, the 17th part, that is the 17th part of the moon, and also the ultimate part of the most elevated part of the elevation of the mantra, the mantrochara, above the head. And there is even a Kvachit Ashtadashi, an 18th part of the moon. So usually the moon has 16 parts, of course, but there is a 17th and an 18th part, invisible, which is the anuttarasya akārasya parabhairava rupinaha. So it's the supreme absolute, the ultimate. And then they say that visargaha kauliki śaktiḥ. So it's the energy of ecstasy, the creative ecstasy. what you feel when you feel is the very ecstasy that is the ecstasy of the power creating everything, the power of consciousness, the power that is consciousness. And then he quotes jñānaughaḥ rasayana, the alchemy of the nectar of knowledge, which points to the supreme beyond speech, beyond all the matras, beyond all the durations of speech. The being which is beyond all phenomena and which is the ground of all phenomena, and which is the tattvam, the being, tattva-atitam, beyond all levels of consciousness. Here we have a good example of the use of the word tattva with different meanings, which is the abhāvam, the non-being, bhavam ashritam, but which is the ground of being, or which is grounded in being. So it's both. It is both being and non-being. It is pure light, prakasha matra, where dharmatraya are, where the three realms exist. I suppose the three realms are the subject, the object, and the knowledge, the so-called triputi. And it is the division in three of the bindu. The bindu is that one light, that one pure light. Shiva bindur iti smrita. This is Shiva, the one sphere, the one undivided whole. Anuttaram param dhāma. Tadeva kula muchyate. This is beyond the body, beyond the whole. Kula is the whole, and it is also the body. And akula is what is above and beyond. Kula atita. Visargastasya kauliki shaktiruchyate. So this is the ecstasy of God, the ecstasy of the Absolute, which is called Shakti and Kauliki, the power of the whole of the all, of everything that belongs to the being that is beyond everything, the Shakti that belongs to the Shaktimat, Shiva. Well, anyway, you see here again we have quite a complex symbolism alluding to many elements of the language of the Tantras, which is a mixture of symbols, poetry, and ritual jargon. But the meaning here is quite clear and simple. Just practice. You don't need to understand that jargon. You can, I believe, also find your own jargon, your own words. You can, because it would be strange that somehow contacting the creative source of everything you could not be able to create your own words, your own language, isn't it? So anyway, verse 92. Om vyomākāraṃ svam ātmānaṃ dhyāyed digbhir anāvṛtam nirāśrayā citiḥ śaktiḥ svarūpam darshayet tada. So one should contemplate dhyāyed. One should contemplate one's own self, svam ātmānaṃ, in the form of the sky, of the empty sky, pure sky, vyomākāraṃ, shape without shape, of the sky, uncovered, unveiled, without clouds, not like now, no clouds, blue sky, digbhir anāvṛtam, in all directions uncovered, without clouds, so pure blue sky. And citiḥ, the energy that is awareness, that is consciousness, citiḥ śaktiḥ. Nirāśrayā, becoming without support, again without fixation, not looking at here, looking at that, looking at this, because all that entails a kind of contraction of consciousness, of awareness, of attention. It's the same, because attention is nothing but awareness contracted. Contracted why? Contracted because of selecting a limited object and excluding apoha, all the rest. So this is contractions, grasping. All graspings imply contraction. So here, to come back from contracted attention to uncontracted awareness, look at something in which you cannot, your attention cannot fixate anything, and so your attention cannot but relax, open, and become again infinite awareness, like a wave going back into the sea. And then tada dhyāyed, one will see, it will show that śaktiḥ, that state of awareness, that awareness once in that state of openness will show dhyāyed swarupam, one's own essence, that is her own essence as well. It's the same. This is non-dual. So it's digbhir anāvṛtam vishvavyāpinam. It pervades everything, like space pervades, like the sky pervades everything, everywhere. Anākritim, without any shape, without any structure, without high and low, without shape, without corners, without center. So there is nowhere, no point to grasp, no reference to hold on. Ahameva paro hamsaha. I am myself the supreme soul, the supreme life. Hamsaha means also life, the life energy, prana shakti. Paramatma paratpara, I'm the supreme self, beyond the supreme, beyond the beyond. So this is a quote given by Ananda. So here we have also one practice. Those three verses, as usual, as often, can be seen as three separate, distinct practices, or as three points of the very same practice. And that same practice, that one practice, can be the Shambhavi Mudra, the main practice of meditation, of formless meditation, at least, within Tantric Yoga tradition, within Shaiva and Shakta Tantric Yoga, within Kashmir Shaivism. You sit comfortably like a mountain, completely relaxed, but vertical, with slightly open mouth, lips and teeth not touching, as if you were saying ah, or ha, or vowelless ha, and you remain with wide open eyes into the sky. And you relax like that, completely open, the five senses totally open, but inside completely silent. This is really the heart, if there is one, the heart of Tantric Yoga, of Tantric meditation. It is as simple as that and as powerful as that, because that practice induces a no mind state, a silent mind state, almost automatically. It's like a kind of avesha. You feel as if invaded by clear awareness, transparent, limpid, completely mute, completely silent, as if your body, your awareness, and the sky were mixing together, blending together, were becoming one. Your awareness is expanding, and at the same time, the sky is entering. So you remain completely wide open and completely silent inside, without much effort, just relaxing. And your mind dissolves, that is, it becomes more and more quiet and more clear, like the sky. So, that's all for today. Thank you for listening, and see you for another video.